In this video, I'm going to share with you the hidden leadership principles that Jensen Huang, arguably one of the greatest CEOs of our times, have used to lead NVIDIA to being a trillion-dollar company and completely reinvent its business in the age of AI. I've been studying Jensen's talks at Stanford, Columbia Business School, and Major AI Summit, and he keeps coming back to a handful of principles that have really shaped how they think and lead at NVIDIA. It's what makes them dangerous. And so in this video, we're going to talk about those 5 principles. By the way, my name is Eric. I'm a keynote speaker and leadership specialist, and I'm on a mission to document the transformation of 100 companies and the CEO playbooks that accompany them. So principle 1 is to say yes before you are ready. Jensen gives this advice to his kids and his company. When they want to try something ambitious, the default answer is yes, and the expectation is that you will figure out how to make it work. This is a reflex that he has now cultivated in NVIDIA. People who reach for those barely possible ideas are trusted to work out the details while the rest of the world is still waiting for permission. It's an idea that's very reminiscent for me of Reid Hoffman, who said that starting a company is like jumping off a cliff and then assembling an airplane on the way down. And this entrepreneurial spirit is something we all need right now, whether we are building our own company or someone else's. We need a willingness to dive in and then just figure things out. Of course, this isn't without guardrails. What Jensen knows is that when you hire the right people with the right ideas and the right values, then you can allow them some freedom to run. The truth, though, is that in most companies, we say we want experimentation, but we prioritize safety. Jean-Paul Sartre captured something that I think every leader should think about. He said, "I've led a toothless life. I was reserving myself for later on. And I've just noticed that my teeth have gone." A lot of leaders do the same thing with their teams, with their own careers, and with their companies. They keep waiting for the moment when it feels safe to take a bite, but then they might at some point discover they've waited for too long. The world rewards taking action. The world rewards those who are willing to take some risk. And so that's exactly what you need to do. Sometimes we need to just say yes and then go and figure it out. So if you want to build this into your company or team, start by identifying some areas where you think you can have the yes, go run the experiment attitude, and then allow your team some freedom to act within those parameters. This brings us to principle number 2. Principle number 2 is to trade control for deep autonomous talent. Jensen is known for running NVIDIA with an unusually flat structure. So he has dozens of direct reports and very few one-on-one meetings. At first glance, this sounds like a recipe for chaos, but when you listen to him describe it, you realize it's a deliberate choice that forces clarity about who he surrounds himself with. In his view, the people who report to the CEO should require very little emotional management. They should already be exceptional in their craft. They should be able to make decisions and carry responsibility and move work forward without constant guidance. So the structure that you see is actually a signal that says if you are close to the center, you are expected to carry your own weight. The shorthand here is surround yourself with competence and then let go of the need to control people. I've often said that companies hire dangerous people only to make them harmless. They defang people by overloading them with bureaucracy and rules. They stifle their ability to say yes and then go and figure it out. General Stanley McChrystal said that in his time leading special operations, he realized that a commander issuing orders down a strict chain was too slow for what was happening on the ground. And so he really encouraged leaders to push decisions down to the level where people are most informed and to create a shared understanding so that teams can act with speed and judgment without waiting for permission. So your job then becomes creating an environment where others can flourish and not being the person with every single answer. This is very close to what Jensen does at NVIDIA. The power moves from one leader trying to control everything to many leaders who are trusted to move because they understand what is happening and they've been given the power to do so. Now, even a team that is highly autonomous can still spend most of its energy on the wrong thing, which leads us to principle number 3. Principle number 3 is to choose your suffering. When Jensen speaks about leadership and entrepreneurship, he often returns to a very simple observation. Building something meaningful involves long stretches of discomfort. There are going to be seasons of loneliness, uncertainty, embarrassment, and even public mistakes. Now, those seasons aren't a sign that you are off track, they are actually just the price of admission. NVIDIA's story reflects this perfectly. For years, they invested in CUDA, their platform for general purpose computing on GPUs. While many saw this as a distraction, and the payoff didn't arrive for quite some time, it required capital, patience, and tolerance for skepticism. But today, that bad idea is a core part of the infrastructure behind modern AI. The important distinction is this: there's accidental suffering and there's chosen suffering. Accidental suffering is something we can't avoid. It's the firefighting, the political battles, the chronic overload that we have to deal with. It drains our energy, but it doesn't really move us forward. Chosen suffering is different. It's the hardship that comes from committing to a long-term bet and then holding that line even if it doesn't make sense in the moment. Marcus Aurelius said, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." One of the main ideas behind the obstacle is the way is that you don't just get through hardship, you actually use that hardship. The obstacle becomes the path. You decide which difficulties are worth leaning into because of who they will force you to become, because where it will lead you over time. A stress test you can use here is that when people complain of pressure or stress, ask a very simple question. Are we suffering for a mountain that matters or for one that doesn't? Principle number 4 is to make domain expertise your unfair advantage. Jensen has said openly that writing code is becoming less special. We all know this. With modern AI systems, you can describe an intention in natural language and then receive working code in response. So the skill that remains rare isn't your typing speed or your ability to code. The scarce skill is a deep understanding of the problem that you are trying to solve. He says this is the real asset, the quality of your questions. The organization or person that understands the domain most deeply can ask the most interesting and precise questions. AI then becomes an amplifier for that understanding. Throughout his talks, you see this pattern. He returns to first principles thinking about computing, graphics, AI. He looks at the physics, the architecture, the customer, and the use case in detail. And it's that level of attention that gives NVIDIA a perspective that is very difficult to imitate just by hiring a few new engineers or doing a stand-up with your team. So how do you translate that into your own context? Well, start with these 3 questions for your leadership team. First, in which part of our world do we genuinely understand the customer better than anyone else? Second, what data or patterns do we see that almost no one else can see? And 3, if we gave an AI model only our questions and our data, what could we ask her to do that others wouldn't even think of? Your answers here point directly to where AI can become a multiplier rather than a novelty in your business. They also reveal where you are still relying on generic knowledge. The way forward for leaders and for teams is to become good at what Charlie Munger calls creating a lattice work of mental models. This means creating a connected structure of ideas from different disciplines so that when you look at a situation, you can see it from multiple angles at once. And when you combine that lattice work with true domain expertise and artificial intelligence, you begin to notice patterns that others will absolutely never see. From my work with leadership teams, I see that companies that move the fastest with AI aren't the ones with the biggest budgets, but the ones who are obsessively close to the problem of their customers. They listen to them, they sit with the data, they allow themselves to be curious again, and that mindset ultimately prepares them for this final principle that I want to share with you. Principle 5 is grow your people instead of replacing them. Jensen leads tens of thousands of people in one of the most competitive talent markets in the world. It would be very easy for him to treat individuals as interchangeable, especially in the age of AI. Recently, he actually blasted other CEOs using AI as a layoff excuse, saying that we are scaring people about this technology instead of getting them excited about it. His language around people is patient and demanding. In interviews, he often tells the story of how he started out cleaning bathrooms and washing dishes. And he uses that experience to make a point that skills can be learned, that circumstances can change. And with the right environment and enough effort, people can grow into responsibilities that once seemed out of reach. One of his most striking lines is that he very seldomly fires people. Instead, he would rather push them until they reach a higher level of performance. Commentators sometimes summarize it as torturing people into greatness, although he is clearly speaking about intensity and high standards rather than cruelty. But the core idea here is simple. Talent is not only discovered, it is also developed. And so, for your own leadership, this principle invites a different kind of patience. When someone is struggling, the easiest path is sometimes to label them as a poor fit and then begin a replacement process. Sometimes it might be necessary, but often it's simply just the easy fix. A more demanding path is to ask whether the person can grow into what this role requires if you invest attention and give clear and consistent feedback. Bill Walsh, the legendary coach of the San Francisco 49ers, built his entire philosophy around this idea. He focused obsessively on teaching standards and habits, and he believed that if you did that well, then the score takes care of itself. His aim was a self-sustaining, winning organization where everyone understood their role and could execute it when required. But this required relentless coaching, clear expectations, and a refusal to let people slide. Growing people instead of replacing them lives in that same space. You decide what good looks like, you coach people up to that line, and over time, the capability of the individual begins to match the ambitions of the team. From what I see across many organizations, the ones that compound over time tend to share this pattern. They retain the people who are willing to grow, they coach them, stretch them, and sometimes frustrate them. But over the years, those people become the carriers of the culture and the craft. And that slow, deliberate approach to growth is one of the most powerful forms of leadership. If you've enjoyed this video, make sure to check out this amazing transformation next.